Welcome to the 21st century. My name is Marlon Maddox, and I'm host of the nationally syndicated radio news talk program, Point of View. You know, the new millennium is already proving to be a time of incredible progress in the areas of science and technology, and our scientists are racing to discover cures for a number of devastating diseases. Unfortunately, what should have been an incredible advancement for the human race has resulted in the creation of one of the most unthinkable industries imaginable, the multi-million-dollar-a-year business of cutting up innocent babies and selling their parts for experimentation. For those who may be unfamiliar with this grisly practice, we'll show you how these modern-day Frankensteins are able to not only circumvent the law, but to utilize your tax dollars in the process. In the 1990s, a new method of abortion was perfected by Dr. Martin Haskell of Dayton, Ohio. This procedure would become known as partial birth abortion. In this procedure, a baby, just seconds away from birth, is killed by a medical doctor in one of the most horrifying manners imaginable. In fact, partial birth abortion was so grisly that the American Medical Association refused to acknowledge it as a legitimate procedure. And when word of this gruesome practice leaked out, outraged Americans began contacting their representatives in Washington. Congress responded by voting to ban the procedure, not once, but twice. However, their bipartisan voices were ultimately silenced in both instances through vetoes by then-President Bill Clinton. As we'll see later, Clinton had more than just maintaining a woman's right to choose as his reason for keeping this procedure legal.
In the first stage of the procedure, the abortionist is actually watching the baby on a TV screen using an ultrasound machine. This allows the abortionist to reach in with forceps and grab a baby, usually by a leg, turn the baby around, and begin to deliver the baby, while still alive, into the birth canal. At a certain point, the abortionist is able to grab the baby with his hands and continue to deliver the baby into the birth canal, everything except for the head. In this procedure, it is very important that the head not emerge from the womb, because that, of course, would be a live birth under the law. So the doctor actually grips the baby in a certain way described in the paper to ensure that the head does not emerge as well as the body. Then at the point where the entire baby has been delivered alive into the birth canal, except for the head, the doctor takes a long surgical scissors, such as this one, or some other similar medical device, and thrusts it through the base of the baby's skull, as shown in drawing number 4. This is generally what kills the baby. He removes the scissors, or the other puncturing instrument, and he inserts a tube, or a catheter. This tube is connected to a very powerful suction machine, which, when he turns it on, removes the baby's brain. This causes the skull to collapse, and the baby's head then emerges, completing the delivery of the dead baby.
What determines whether or not you're a human being? Well, in the case of partial birth abortion, it has everything to do with location. Just think of it. As long as some portion of the baby remains inside the mother, it can be legally killed. Let's say the mother is lying here. Her baby's been pulled out of her womb about 80% of the way. Only the head remains inside. Did you know that according to a Supreme Court decision, this baby is not a human being? However, if the baby is moved about 3 or 4 inches this way, so that the head is outside the womb, then it's considered a human being and is afforded all the rights and privileges guaranteed by our Constitution. Now think with me. Is this logical? It'd be like saying, this is not a pencil, but if I move it over here, then now it's a pencil. The fact is, this is a pencil, whether I hold it here or whether I hold it here. And the baby is a human being, whether it's here or whether it's here. Now, the liberal politicians, liberal members of the press, and liberal members of the entertainment industry would label me a dangerous right-wing extremist for saying what I just said. But I would say that puncturing a baby's skull and then sucking its brains out is extreme. What would you say?
Is partial birth abortion any worse than any other abortion? Well, every abortion kills a living, human, developing baby. But this type of abortion is particularly gruesome. It's killing a baby during delivery.
This is a medical model of a baby at 4.5 months, 20 weeks. This is the earliest stage at which a partial birth abortion would generally be done. So this is the smallest the baby would be who is a victim of a partial birth abortion. Many are much larger.
They called me up one day and asked me if I would work at the Women's Medical Center. And I told them I would because I didn't have a problem with abortion, or at least I didn't think I did. The first lady we did was 26.5 weeks pregnant. She had just found out that her baby had Down syndrome. And her parents and her boyfriend made her get this abortion. She didn't want it. As a matter of fact, she cried the entire 3 days she was in there. So we did her first because she was upsetting the rest of the patients. And we brought her into the operating room and put the gown on her, put her on the table, and put her legs in the stirrups. And we started an IV and gave her Valium just to calm her down so she wouldn't care what was going on. She didn't get a general anesthetic to knock her out. And I really thought those babies were dead at this point. I thought, they're not going to do this on a live baby, surely. Something's killed the baby. I don't know what I thought killed it, but they were very much alive, and you could see the heartbeat. And taking a pair of forceps, he went up inside the cervix and into the uterus and found one of the baby's feet and turned the baby in utero because it wasn't headed feet first. He has to bring the baby out feet first. So he brought that foot down through the birth canal. Then he went up and he grabbed the other foot and he brought it down through the birth canal until he had both of the feet on the outside. And grabbing his little feet with his hands, he pulled the baby out of the mother breech position until he had the entire body, everything delivered except for the head. And as I stood there, this little baby was kicking his feet and moving his little hands and fingers and very much alive. And the doctor's very careful to make sure that he holds the baby's head in with his 2 fingers, with his left hand, to make sure that that head doesn't slip out. Because if the head slips out now, 3 inches, 3 seconds from being born, and he kills it, it's murder. But as long as he leaves that head in there, and he's very careful to make sure that head stays there, it doesn't matter how he kills it. It's an abortion and it's legal in this country. And as I stood there in horror, I watched this. The doctor took a pair of scissors and into the back of the baby's neck, back here, he plunged those scissors. And when he did this, the baby jerked out in a startle reaction. And he took the scissors and he opened it up to make a hole in the back of the neck. And he took a high-powered suction machine and a catheter and he stuck that into the hole and he literally suctioned out the baby's brains. And they went down the tube and into a jar. And I almost hit the floor. I mean, I stood there and I thought, this isn't happening. This really isn't happening. I'm dreaming this. Please wake me up. And I choked back the tears and the lump in my throat. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I didn't want to be in there, but it happened. He pulled the head out and he cut the cord and he delivered the placenta and threw it in the pan. And he cleaned her up and he took the baby out of the room. And this mom wanted to see her baby. We tried to talk her out of it, but she does have the right to see it. So we cleaned her up and put a pad on her and walked her to the ultrasound machine room. And we cleaned the baby up and put it in a little blanket and we handed it to her. And I don't know what she thought she was going to see, but I don't think it's what she saw, because she looked down in his little face and she started screaming to God to forgive her. And she held him and she rocked him and she begged him to forgive her. And at that point, I couldn't take it. I had to leave. I ran to the bathroom and beside a toilet, I kneeled and I screamed at God and I said, God, why are you letting this happen? Why? Why does this have to happen? This is murder. I mean, I can't believe you'd allow this to happen. There were 7 of these done that day. Every one of the mothers were perfectly healthy. Nothing was wrong with them. They just waited later in their pregnancy to have an abortion. 1 baby had Down syndrome. The rest of them were perfectly healthy babies.
The vast majority of partial birth abortions are performed for purely elective reasons. They're performed on the healthy mothers of healthy babies. Those are the facts. The abortionists don't want to admit that, but that's the reality of partial birth abortion in this country. How does stabbing the child in the back of the head protect the mother? That's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense.
I know of no disease, no congenital anomaly where this type of procedure would be necessary in order to preserve the mother's health or to save her life. And it certainly doesn't do anything for the life of the baby.
The partial birth abortion method is not recognized by the medical community. It's not found in any textbook. Matter of fact, the reason that it's not recognized is because it puts women's health and their reproductive chances at great risk. It does not lessen their risk for having problems. It increases their risk for having problems with future pregnancies.
You have to do what the older obstetricians called a podalic version. Reach into the uterus, find the baby's feet, turn the baby around in the uterus, extract the feet in a breech delivery, and then just before the head is delivered, destroy the baby's life by sucking out its brain. Just that podalic version alone is a very serious threat to the future of that mother's uterus. And so rather than preserving that woman's fertility, I think very likely seriously threaten her future fertility.
The abortion industry claimed that this was a very rare procedure, done only a few hundred times a year and only in the most extreme medical necessity. And much of the major news media adopted that claim and presented it to the American people as fact. It turned out, in fact it was known all along for those who actually investigated the matter, that these claims were false, that partial birth abortions are done thousands of times a year, that the vast majority of these are done on healthy babies of healthy mothers.
The procedure involved in this case is extremely rare. It involves tragic and traumatic circumstances late in pregnancy in cases where the mother's life or health is in danger.
They are rare. They are exceptional. They are there because a woman's life and health is in danger.
So what is before us is a bill to outlaw a medical procedure that is rare, that is used in the most tragic circumstances.
In fact, these abortions take place only when the life or health of the woman is at risk.
The public out there has no clue of what's going on behind these closed doors. They just hear abortion, well, abortion's a woman's right. You know, she has a right to do what she wants to with her body. It wasn't her body they was doing it to. It was those little tiny babies that they were doing it to. And it was just incredible. I don't think I will ever get over seeing those babies move and flinch from the pain that was being inflicted in them. And then looking down into that little boy's face. If I've ever seen an angel, it was that day.
Some have likened this chart to a depiction of an appendicitis operation. My God. Appendicitis. That's not an appendix. That's not a blob of tissue. It is a baby. It's a baby.
According to the courts of the United States, and this is true of Canada also, you're allowed to kill the baby as long as the baby gets dead before he comes out into the air. But in this procedure, the baby is alive until the head is pierced. But sometimes, at that point, she gives a big pop, out comes the head. Now you have a live child in your arms. What do? Well, they don't publicize this, of course, but they take the baby and put him in a bucket of water and drown him.